In the history of the sea, one name echoes louder than any other: Titanic. Her story is legendary, a cautionary tale told for generations. But what if I told you Titanic had a sister, a ship bigger, stronger, and supposedly safer, a ship built from the lessons of that fateful April night? Her name was Britannic, and her end was just as tragic. Not on a luxury cruise, but in the midst of a world at war. This is not just a story about a sinking ship. It's a story about irony, fate, and the eerie repetition of history. Let's go back to where it all began. After the Titanic disaster in 1912 shocked the world, the White Star Line was under immense pressure. They were building three Olympic-class ships: the Olympic, the Titanic, and the third, originally to be called Gigantic. But after Titanic's demise, the company quietly renamed her Britannic, as if even her name had to carry the weight of survival. Britannic was meant to be the redemption of the White Star Line. She was the largest of the three sisters, stretching nearly 900 feet long. Engineers swore she was unsinkable. Again. This time, they meant it. 16 watertight compartments, reinforced hull, and lifeboats, enough for everyone. Titanic had gone down because of arrogance. Britannic would not make the same mistake, or so they thought. But Britannic would never carry a single paying passenger. Just 2 years after Titanic sank, the world descended into chaos. World War I was raging across Europe, and Britannic was called into service, transformed from a floating palace into a hospital ship. Her grand halls were stripped of chandeliers, her marble floors replaced with stretchers and beds. The white star on her funnels was painted over with the Red Cross of Mercy. She became a lifeline, racing back and forth across the Mediterranean, bringing wounded soldiers home from the front lines. Her decks echoed with the cries of the injured. Doctors and nurses worked around the clock to save lives, and for a while, she did just that. But on the morning of November 21st, 1916, that mission would come to an end. The sun rose over the Aegean Sea. Britannic, carrying over 1,000 people, mostly medical staff, steamed through calm waters. There was no warning, no enemy in sight. And then, at 8:12 a.m., disaster. A deafening explosion rocked the ship. She had struck a mine, laid by a German U-boat days earlier. The starboard hull was ripped open. Seawater surged in. The ship began to list immediately. Captain Charles Bartlett, a veteran sailor, acted fast. He ordered the watertight doors sealed. But it was already too late. Water was flooding in through the open portholes on the lower decks, left ajar for ventilation. In less than 10 minutes, it was clear. Britannic was sinking. Lifeboats were lowered quickly, but panic was rising. And then, tragedy struck again. Without knowing the engines were still running, two lifeboats drifted into the massive propellers. The blades tore them apart. Screams filled the air. Wood shattered. Bodies vanished into the churning sea. It was a nightmare. A ship built to be safer than Titanic, claiming lives in an even more horrifying way. But amid the chaos, there was also courage. Doctors and nurses stayed behind to help the injured. Crew members helped passengers into boats. And somehow, most survived. Out of 1,066 people on board, 1,036 were rescued. But 30 souls never made it home. One of the survivors was a woman named Violet Jessup. She had been a stewardess aboard the Titanic and survived. Now she was serving as a nurse on the Britannic. And once again, she lived. Two of the worst maritime disasters in history, and she walked away from both. They called her Miss Unsinkable, but some called her cursed. Britannic slipped beneath the surface just 55 minutes after the explosion. The Titanic had taken nearly 3 hours to sink, but the supposedly safer ship vanished in less than one. For decades, the Britannic lay silent on the seafloor, forgotten by history. Then in 1975, legendary ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau discovered her wreck. Lying on her side, 400 feet deep in the Aegean, still haunting, still proud. Divers who visited her described eerie scenes. Medical equipment still in place, corridors intact, rooms preserved as if waiting for passengers who would never arrive. She is the largest ocean liner on the ocean floor. and perhaps the loneliest. Today, Britannic is a ghost, not just of a ship, but of a dream, the dream that we could master nature. That tragedy could be engineered out of existence, but history doesn't forget, and sometimes it repeats itself. Titanic is the story the world remembers, but Britannic is the warning it ignored. If you found this story haunting, moving, or powerful, subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Real lives, real history, real tragedy. Let us know in the comments. Had you ever heard of Britannic before today?